afternoon, good morning, good day. I don't know what time it is wherever you are in this wonderful world, but we're really excited that you're here joining us virtually for this very important conversation discussing how we support students on campus. If you aren't aware, or you haven't seen my face around, which maybe is not the case. My name is Mauricio Gonzalez. I'm an assistant director of undergraduate admission at Northwestern. I'm also very lucky to call myself an alum. I graduated in 2018 with my degree in psychology and a certificate in integrated marketing communications. As you can see by my name, even though it's pretty small for you on the YouTube screen, I use he, him pronouns. And then I'm a proud resident of Chicago. And this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because I hold many different identities that I navigated while I was a student at Northwestern, as well as just in general. There was a lot of support that I experienced in undergrad, and I'm very fortunate for the staff that we have in these different departments in here with us today. So I'm going to stop talking and allow our different folks to introduce ourselves. So Dav, do you want to go first and then head it off to Mayra and then Adam, and then we can circle it back to me. So Dav, introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Like was just shared, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. So excited that you are interested in joining the Wildcat family. We are honored to have you with us. My name is Daviree Velázquez Phillip, or Dav. Most folks on campus refer to me as Dav, so I welcome you to do the same. My gender pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I had the honor of serving as the Director of Multicultural Student Affairs. And I will briefly share a little bit about Multicultural Student Affairs, but then I'm going to pass it to my colleagues. So from here on out, you'll hear me refer to it as MSA. And MSA serves our marginalized students whose identities reflect their racial, ethnic, gender, and sexuality backgrounds. So if you are a student of color, if you identify as Black, Native and Indigenous, LGBTQIA+, and at the intersections of any of all of those identities, we are here to serve you. And I'll share a little bit more about that soon. But for now, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Mayra.
Thank you, Dav. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying their day. My name is Mayra Garces. I use she, her pronouns, and I am one of the assistant directors in Student Enrichment Services. And similar to Dav, we have an acronym for that very long title. So Student Enrichment Services, also known as SES, and we serve first generation, lower income, and or undocumented DACA students. And I will share so much more about all those words later on. But I'm excited to be here and excited that you're considering us the next step in your life journey. So welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Hibma. I'm a staff psychologist at Counseling and Psychological Services. This is the last acronym maybe that you'll be hearing this afternoon or whatever time of the day it is. We refer to it as CAPS. We're really tasked with attending to the mental health needs of students on campus. I'm really excited to talk with you more about that. And my pronouns are he and him.
Thank you so much, everyone. Again, thank you so much for being here. And before we do move forward with our programming here today, I also want to take the time to recognize that I know these are very difficult times that we are experiencing in this country, in this world, with the ongoing pandemic, with everything that we are experiencing when it comes to, unfortunately, a lot of the racial injustices that have been brought to light this past year, even though they aren't new and they've been historically happening in the United States, unfortunately. And just in general, with all the natural disasters taking place. So we do really appreciate you being here and taking the time to spend an afternoon with us, or again, whatever you are, to learn more about how we support our different and wonderful undergraduate students at Northwestern. I was sharing this with our staff featured on this call a little bit earlier. It really was their offices that really made Northwestern such a special home and a special community for me. So I can't thank them enough for being here. And hopefully you can get a sense of that as we move forward. So for the first half of this little session, we'll get, as you have already heard, a little preview as to what each of our offices represented here do in terms of supporting Northwestern students. Obviously, this isn't meant to be a totally comprehensive video, as we hope to collaborate and disseminate this information about these offices throughout our programming, our social media, everything along those lines. And you can consider this somewhat of a crash course-ish thing. And of course, if there are any questions that arise as they speak, I will be keeping track of them in our chat, asking them later in our conversation. And you also will have the opportunity in our second half to ask us during a Q&A sort of vibe session, as I like to describe it. So without further ado, Dav, since you wonderfully went first, would you like to go first in discussing how great MSA is?
I would be honored. And truly, I am honored because I get to inherit a history that starts in 1968. So, as you were just reflecting on our racial injustices in our country, and one of the things that you just said was that they aren't new, they certainly weren't new to Northwestern. And so, I get to talk a little bit about how MSA got started. So, in 1968, if you can picture at that time that we were still living through segregation, and you can imagine that at an institution like Northwestern that was historically for men, upper class men, cis men, heterosexual men, white men, that as we were integrating as a university, that there was a lot of racial tension on campus. And any Wildcat and anyone who would attend really any institution in the United States should know what allowed your university become integrated, if in fact it currently is. And for us, it was the Bursars takeover. So we had a group of students who occupied the Bursars office and had a list of demands. And one of those demands was, we want a space on campus where we as Black students feel safe, seen, and celebrated. At the time, Black students were not permitted to live on campus. There wasn't a student center that felt welcoming to Black students. And so there was a need and a desire and advocacy for a space on campus, which today we still have, and it's called the Black House, which is currently being renovated. A huge renovation project that should open up in the spring. So if you are joining us, that will be a part of your legacy as well. But what's really important about the 1968 Bursars takeover and the beginning of the Black House is that is the birth of Multicultural Student Affairs. So we start off with our history being centered in Blackness and honoring Black liberation. And then in the early 2000s, we were given the gift of the Multicultural Center, which housed our APITA student services. So that's our Asian Pacific Islander, Desi American services, our Latinx, or at the time, our Hispanic student services, our Native American and Indigenous student services, and on the third floor of the Multicultural Center, we have a Muslim prayer room. So now MSA has acquired 2 spaces that allow us to serve multiple marginalized communities. And then later on in the 2000s, we were given the gift of the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center, which is within Norris. So it's a space on campus that really honors our fluidity in gender and sexuality, and opportunity for us to come together, be in community with one another. And in all 3 of those spaces, what I can promise you is that we offer resources, staffing, and student employment. And while we're 3 different locations, we are one office. It's important to us that we honor the intersections of who you are as a student, that if you are out or contemplating coming out, or unsure of how you identify racially, or you grew up proud of who you are and your identity, that regardless of where you're at on your journey, we are here to be with you. And not only do we engage in identity exploration through programs such as Heritage Months or monthly engagements, but we also make sure that whatever you're navigating inside of the residence halls or perhaps in the classroom, that we are there to support you with that as well. Because sometimes, as we named at the top of this meeting, that our spaces aren't always the most inclusive, that the world isn't the most inclusive, and that there's still a lot of room for growth. And so when you encounter something that maybe feels off, maybe feels like a violation, we are here to support you. Our team serves on a team called the Bias Incident Response Team. We also do a lot of outreach around navigating microaggressions and imposter syndrome, and not really sure if this environment is for you. Because let me tell you, and I know my colleagues would join me in saying this is absolutely for you. This is just as much for you as it is for anybody. And in fact, I would say you deserve it that much more. So in wrapping up, what I will share is our staff is in 3 spaces, but we have a pretty large staff. There's 12 professional folks. We have 4 graduate assistants, and then we have 20 undergraduate student workers. So if you're thinking about wow, I think I would really want to get involved in social justice work or leadership, or really would want to be a part of a community, you can do that both through your involvement as a student leader, but you can also do it through student employment. And we make sure that we hold both work study and non-work study positions so we can meet you where you're at, regardless of your income or your background, that we are going to get you connected to our communities in one way or the other. I can go on since we have such a vibrant history and so many things that we offer. But the last two things that I'll mention right now, we are in the midst of our Latinx Heritage Month and our Queer and Trans Empowerment Month. So do yourself a favor, go to Multicultural Student Affairs, our website, go ahead and look at our Heritage Months, and you'll also see us starting to tee up for our Native American and Indigenous Heritage Month. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stab. That was so wonderful and so amazing, as usual. Oh yeah, and also shout out, happy Latinx Heritage Month to all my fellow Latinx identified folks who are in the audience here today, coming from a proud Latino alum at Northwestern. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I don't want to steal your thunder or anything along those lines, staff, but MSA is amazing. They have really great support for all different student organizations. And I was really involved with MSA when I was a student at Northwestern. So very thankful that they existed. And they were, especially for me, a very important space as a student of color, a queer student, and everything along these lines. So thank you again for being here. And drop those questions, y'all. Don't be shy. We're here to help answer any of those things that you may be thinking about when looking at colleges and universities. That being said, and now that brings us to our second wonderful partner, if I may add, Mayra. Mayra, do you want to talk a little bit about Student Enrichment Services, its history, or anything you want to share, our mentorship programs, all that good stuff?
Yes. Well, Dab is such a wonderful storyteller, and storytelling is something that I feel very passionate about. And so I was like, yeah, I mean, I know this history because I've been at the university for the past 6 years, but I think it's a gift to exist as a partner, not just with MSA, but with CAPS as well. But there's so much rich history. And so like in that same vein, I will follow and say that Student Enrichment Services, or SES, as I'm going to refer to it moving forward because it's a mouthful, is also born out of a need, a student need, and a student want and collaboration with administration to create something that doesn't exist yet. And I think that's so powerful. And that's really where SES's history starts. So in 2013, President Shapiro, or Morty, as I like to refer to him, and the vice president of Student Affairs at the time, Patricia Tellez-Irvin, and the co-presidents of Quest Plus. And Quest Plus is a organization that's made up of Quest scholars, which for some of you, that language may be familiar because you may be looking into applying to be a Quest Bridge scholar. And at Northwestern, Quest Plus is an organization not only made up of Quest scholars, but any first generation lower income students. And it was that collaboration that created the opportunity for Student Enrichment Services to exist. And in 2014, we were able to have an office, essentially. And so the current director of the office, Courtney Cockrell, is still with us, still writing hard for our first generation lower income students and paving the way. So it's very exciting for me to work with someone that passionate. And then our office has grown since then as well. And so I get to work with 6 other passionate humans that want to see first generation lower income students and undocumented DACA students succeed. And so I mentioned earlier who we serve, and we serve first generation, lower income, and or undocumented DACA students. I'm going to break it down, knowing full well that these terms may be new for you, and that's okay. So please ask questions for clarification. And we're always open to answering questions in the future around what those things mean. And so I say first generation, and that refers to first generation college students. So these are students who they are first in their family to be attending a four-year college or university. And that's a little bit gray area, right? Gray area, because it's not always that, that black and white. And so we're really looking at students who are the first and or have parents or guardians who didn't complete college in a traditional way. And so coming to Northwestern feels like new territory. It feels like new things are happening. So that's first generation. Lower income. And so that's a little bit more complex, and the way that I think it'll land hopefully is that if you are a student who currently gets free reduced lunch, or as you're completing your FAFSA, you may see language around Pell eligible. Those are things that may indicate that you would fall under this like category of lower income. And then finally, undocumented DACA. And so both of these terms are referring to immigration status. And without getting into like the nitty gritty of what all that means, is essentially we support students who just have a very different journey at Northwestern, particularly around immigration status. And there we have several tools to support those students in particular. And actually, I do that in collaboration with Alejandro Magaña, who is the associate director in MSA. And so as you can see here, and as you will, like, you know, Adam will go next, like there's a lot of cross collaboration here, and that's very intentional. That's on purpose, because we know that our students don't just exist in these buckets of like identities, right? There's a lot of overlap there. And then, you know, Mauricio mentioned like building community, and the last thing I'll talk about is financial resources. And so for building community, there are a lot of ways for first generation lower income and undocumented DACA students to get connected and start building community, not just with SES, but students who also identify in those ways. And so when you start at Northwestern, you go through a program called Wildcat Welcome, which is an orientation program. And we have, all of us have programming during that time. I also have the privilege of overseeing the Compass Mentorship program. And so that's a program that connects first year Figley students, Figley being the abbreviation for first generation lower income student. So that's one program. We also have something called Knight Scholars Program and the Ryan Scholars Program. And so they have similar, all three of these programs have similar goals, but very different delivery. And even if you're not in those programs, there are a lot of ways to get involved. So we have programs like Work the Room, which is a career development program, emerging programs with MSA and CAPS. And we have an I'm First campaign. I'm actually wearing the shirt right now. It just says first generation college student. And there are just a lot of different ways to get connected as well. And then finally, for financial resources, so we partner very closely with financial aid. They determine eligibility, and based on that eligibility, you could have access to several of these programs that I'm about to name. And these initiatives were born out of Student Enrichment Services, SES, but now live in financial aid and the Office of the Provost. And so things like Books for Cats, for example. So this is a program limited to STEM only. So science, technology, that's an abbreviation that I do not know fully, but STEM, I see Dad is nodding something. But you know, if you know that, put it in the chat. So STEM only, and it's for first years only as well. So this is a program that's limited to first year and STEM students. And then startup stipends, again, only for first year. And a startup stipend is just a little like some money to get you through the startup of coming to college as well. And I see STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. That's a mouthful too. And then within SES, we manage winter gear. And so we make sure that for students who need access to coats, to boots, they have access to that. And then finally, we have the SCS One form that, long story short, is similar to the Common App in that like you have access to multiple avenues of opportunities that are financed to help make so many opportunities accessible financially. So that's a lot of information. I'm going to stop there, but that's kind of the bulk of what SES does.
Amazing. Thank you, Mayra. I know there's so much more that y'all do. And I know that there's already questions coming in for all of our wonderful guests here today. So keep them coming. I'm keeping track of them for those in the chat. So don't think I'm just letting them pass by. Great. Well, last but not least, obviously, Adam, do you want to talk a little bit about how CAPS supports students at Northwestern?
Absolutely, I would love to. So hi everyone, again, my name's Adam and I work with CAPS. CAPS is Counseling and Psychological Services. And we're really tasked with attending to the mental health needs of the students on campus. So CAPS serves as the primary mental health service at Northwestern University, and we provide a number of different services that I want to give you a brief intro into. But two really important things to know about the services that we provide are that they are free of charge. So you don't pay for CAP services once you're a student here. And they're also based on a short-term model. So we provide short-term treatment to Northwestern students. So if you are someone who has for a long time been wanting to connect with counseling, maybe you're waiting to get to college to get connected, or maybe you're someone who has been in counseling for a while, have kind of established mental health care, we have options for different people. And so one of the big things that we do is we bring students in or have a phone call with them where we discuss what the student is needing, and it's kind of an initial care plan to figure out what would be the best services to offer that student. And so those services can look a couple of different ways. One of the big things that we do is we provide some referrals to community providers if that's something that seems like we collaboratively decide would be the best fit. And so instances where we might connect someone to a provider in the community would be if the student is having more specialized needs and they benefit from meeting with a specialist in the community. If you're someone who's wanting longer term care, maybe you have pretty established mental health care and you're like, you know, I know I kind of want support throughout my time at college, then we might connect you with someone in the community for that longer term support. Also, if you are looking to connect with a therapist who holds certain identities that we don't have on our staff and you want to be connected with someone who holds those identities, we'll help you connect with someone in the community. We have a really robust referral network. We meet with the providers. A lot of them have trained at CAPS in the past, and we get positive student feedback about these providers. So we're always really happy to help you connect with someone in the community if that seems like that would be the best fit for you. We also have a number of services that we provide on campus. And so one of those is group therapy. In addition to being a staff psychologist at CAPS, I am the coordinator of the group therapy program. And we offer a number of different groups that I am really excited to lead. And you can always check out our website for more information on them. But they're anywhere from sort of supportive spaces to more spaces about learning about yourself and others, to maybe a group that's focused on building emotional well-being, where you really get to learn both from the facilitators, but also from your peers. I love group, so I really encourage people to check that out when they come to campus. We also offer brief individual therapy at CAPS. We have a number of different providers at CAPS that you can meet with for a brief stay in individual therapy, and that's something that we offer as well. We also offer a number of outreach services. So this is, for instance, like an outreach service that I'm offering right now, where I'm reaching out to people in the community, not necessarily just in my office, whatever offices mean these days. And so like some of those different outreach services that we might provide. For instance, we have one of our staff members is the liaison to Black and African American students. And so in the past, we've offered a group called Sister Sister, that is a group to support an empowering space for Black identifying women. We've also at different times offered a group called Sana Sana, and that was led by our liaison to Latinx students. And that was where it was an empowering space for all Latinx identifying students to build community and engage in self-care. So we do different sort of outreach groups in the community to help build community, build empowering spaces. And so those are some other services that we provide. So again, there's no charge for our services. Again, we offer a number of different services from group therapy to individual therapy at CAPS. to getting connected with someone in the community if that seems like the best fit. And one other thing about getting connected in the community. So if you are wanting like longer term care, or there's someone specific in the community that seems like they'd be a good fit, that does generally go through your insurance, or if you're paying out of pocket, your out of pocket costs. And we don't want finances to be a barrier to connecting to the mental health care that you need. And so we have a wonderful care and referral coordinator, and she works with students to find options that are accessible to them, and also works with students to connect them to the Northwestern health insurance plan if their current health insurance doesn't provide adequate coverage to meet those mental health needs. And so we don't want there to be barriers to you getting the care that you are needing. And so if there's ever anything that you're wondering, we always just encourage you to call us and get connected. One final thing that we do is we offer crisis services. So we want to be available to students if there's any sort of emergency situation, if you're worried about yourself, if you're worried about a roommate and you need to connect with someone, just to make sure that everyone's safe. We always encourage you to call us in those situations, and there's always a counselor available to help you navigate that situation and figure out how to keep everyone safe. And so that's just another more emergent service that we offer as well. So that's just a brief overview of the services that we offer at CAPS. We have a really robust sort of broad range of services that we offer, and I'm excited at the opportunity of perhaps working with some of you at CAPS in the future.
Thank you so much, Adam. All of that was very valuable information. And I know that part of the reason why we have these different guests, especially CAPS with us here today, is because I know that from interacting with y'all and your admission officers interacting with y'all, this has been a frequently asked department about. And I'm really grateful in general when it comes to each department represented here today, and especially with CAPS. There is no stigma for reaching out for help at Northwestern. I think that really is what allowed me to thrive, being a part of that student community, because as you can see, our staff members are very wonderful, supportive, and willing to reach out, and will reach out to you if they see that something is up or you do need that additional support. But it really is the student community that we have here that makes it feel so effortless at times. So it'd be like, you know what, I'm going to go reach out to CAPS, whether it be finding this specific service, or I'm going to sign up and see if I can acquire a mentor through the Compass Mentorship program, and or you know what, I want to explore X identity that I hold, or I think I hold, or I'm figuring this out. Let me attend this programming. So that's an overview again, but I know that I have some questions for y'all, and we've been getting a good questions through our little YouTube chat. The first question that I have to pose for y'all as we transition into our little panel here. So how exactly have you been able to transition and sort of function with all of these services that you do provide now that we're all remote and virtual during the COVID-19 pandemic? And anyone can jump in with who would like to go first. Yeah, Dav, go for it.
All right, wonderful. I'm happy to share. I will first start off by saying that we were a little bit concerned. We wanted to make sure that our students still felt connected and cared for. And I don't know about you, I have not lived through a pandemic before. And so we weren't really sure how this was going to work. And I'm really grateful to say that we're on the other side of that. And what I mean by that is I no longer have a fear of students feeling connected and cared for. In fact, every single one of the programs that we have provided in person have now been moved virtually. So everything from our Heritage Months to our end of year congratulatories, which are our commencement services, even our student employment, our monthly get-togethers, so like our Black House Community Night, our Latinx Community Night, all of those have moved virtually, and we have the data to back up that students are actually engaging. And we have even more students engaging with us on social media, more passively, finding ways to still say, I want to make sure I spend time with some of my favorite faculty and staff, and I want to make sure I spend time with my peers. So we have seen a steady level of involvement in all of our programs, and sometimes even an intake or an increase. One of the programs that I'm most proud of is Wildcat Welcome. So when you come to the university at the beginning of your time here, you are welcomed with open arms and kind of like a extended party, I would say. There's a huge celebration. Everyone's super excited to welcome you, see you. And normally MSA offers anywhere around 6 programs to make sure that we meet you where you are, whether it's our Rainbow Bonfire, our Student of Color Mixer. This year, because we knew we were in COVID-19, we increased it to 13 programs. So just to give you an idea that not only are we maintaining our level of commitment and connection to you when it comes to programs, but at times we're even offering to make sure we go above and beyond so that you have the community that you deserve. The last thing that I want to say is I saw a question come in about what kind of programs and activities we would offer in person for Latinx Heritage Month compared to virtual. So thank you to the person who asked that question. Everything has remained the same, but the way that it would happen would look different. So for example, last Friday, we had Café con Leche with 8 faculty, and we did it virtually. Had we had been in person, we all would have been in the Multicultural Center together with Café con Leche and allowing people to get together. On October 15th, we have La Bienvenida, which in the beginning of the year, we used to call it Festival, but it's still an opportunity where you get to see mariachi and baile folklorico, and you get to hear all the beautiful music and eat all the wonderful food and be in community with each other. Obviously, that looks a little bit different in a COVID era, but if we were in person, you would see all the faculty and staff bringing their families, their children. You would get to meet folks from around the Chicagoland area. You would get to meet alumni. So our access to each other looks a little bit different with our Latinx Heritage Month programs and even our Queer and Trans Empowerment programs. But regardless, we're still maintaining the essence in a virtual setting. Thank you.
Love it. And I'm glad that those programs are still taking place, and especially the now newly dubbed Bienvenida is taking place. Hopefully you can send me an invite, Dab, if you want. I don't know if I'm like able to go, but I would like to attend. That'd be very interesting.
I'll see if I can sneak you in the guest list.
Okay,
We'll
we'll
see.
talk offline. We'll talk later. Amazing. Thank you, Dav. And then how do have services look like? I guess I'll pick on people now. And you can be like, no. Adam, how have services sort of transitioned now? I know that from my own experiences with like going to therapy as like a normal human being, there's telehealth appointments and everything along those lines. But I'm curious to see how CAPS has adapted to that.
Yes, great question. We have adapted the way probably most counselors have in the country at this point. We're doing video sessions. And so we've adapted our services to this sort of new virtual medium. We are offering virtual and video individual therapy. We're offering video group therapy. We're offering a number of kind of new services that we weren't offering before. For instance, we're offering virtual gathering spaces, which are just places for students to be able to build connection amongst each other and kind of get support from each other during this difficult time. We are offering, we've moved our Coffee Talk virtual, which is a space for international students. And that's another one of the things we've moved online. So basically we've taken everything and either moved it online or moved it onto the phone. And so people are scheduling the appointments the way that they formally would have. Just then after they schedule it, I send out an invitation saying, here's how you're going to connect with me. Here's the links. Here's how you get the software, and we go from there. So one of the things I think I've been reflecting a lot on is I think sometimes it is easy to think about like what's been lost in this virtual space. And I also really like to think about what we're gaining as well. In my groups, in one of the groups, there was a student who had been recently exposed to someone who had COVID. And this student was kind of in that time period where she wasn't sure, she was trying to stay away from people at the time. And I was really happy that she could attend the group that week. Whereas if we were meeting in person, that wouldn't have happened. I've also never been able to see everyone's face at the same time in a group. I'm normally like looking this way or looking that way. And so there's a type of connection that feels very different. And I like to focus on those things as well. So there's some really exciting things that are happening in this virtual space that I'm happy about.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I'm glad that that students are still connecting even now, and that CAPS is very much thriving as well during this time. I bet you knew this was coming, but I've seen some things. Obviously, as one of our social media managers, I follow all of your wonderful accounts all across social media when it comes to MSA, CAPS, SCS, and I see some happenings going on. But Mayra, do you want to address this for SCS as well?
Sure. And really, honestly, I'm going to build off of what Dav shared around like the need, the intention to continue building community. And Adam's point around like, yes, I think, and I'm low-key, I'm still in this place. I'm working through it. But like it is easy to think about the things that we've lost because we're not in person. It's a challenge for me. And I'm like working on it every day to be like, and this is what I'm gaining. There's a lot of loss that has happened since the pandemic has, begun. And so that being said, that like, I think what I'll add to those things is that we feel the same way in SES about those two things. And three, much like some of the history that Dav shared about MSA and what I shared about SES is that the students and what their needs are matter, even in this transition to a virtual space. And so we have really adapted, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, to like what works and what doesn't. And so like we've beefed up our social media presence in large part to the great work of Christina Smith in our office, who like, again, like people in the office that care about the experience that you are going to have when you arrive to Northwestern. And so even if we're virtual, like people are thinking about how can we pivot? How can we make mistakes fast and like programming and like figuring out what you all want and bouncing back and being like, all right, that didn't work. Let's do it differently next time. And then from there, like sharing out, right? Like with each other, even like in our working capacities. So like, I don't feel alone in like building new things out because I know that like I can go to Dav or I can like reach out to CAPS and be like, yo, what did you all do something like this? Did that work for you or no? And so like, it's a combination of like trying to figure things out as we go and never letting go of like the intention of like why we're doing what we're doing, because that still matters no matter if we're in the physical space or in the virtual space, and working to like reframe, right? Like the reframe, like hard shift. I'm still trying to reframe. So I'm here with you. If you're like a person that's like, this virtual life is not for me, I understand. And also I need human connection, and this is the best we have right now. And so I'm going to make this work for us. And we want to make it work for you. And so that's what I'll share there.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mayra. And it also gets me like in a good way. Also, I don't think the virtual life is for me either. I've learned that, it's, as much as I am maybe a Gen Z, who knows at this point, I am not about this Zoom life all the time. However, the silver lining is I get to have wonderful conversations with the three of you that I don't think would be as easy to coordinate if we all were running around campus doing something along those lines, or in my case, traveling out somewhere else in the country doing something along those lines. So I'm glad that we can still connect in this way. So again, I'm glad that y'all are thriving and doing well. There was something else I was going to share. I would now remember it, but I think often the conversations when it comes to, being a student of color or, seeking out support for mental health or being a queer student or being FIGLY, first gen lower income, or undocumented DACA student. Oftentimes when students think about this, or I guess when I thought about this as like a prospective student, it's like, oh, but like, struggle. But I think the beauty and the thing that you just shared, Mayra, is that I think there's a lot of celebration and there's a lot of empowerment that we see in different ways. And I'm glad that all of y'all have been touching upon the different ways that we empower different students. Transitioning, I don't think that was the best segue, but transitioning into empowering a specific population of students, Dav, we are getting a lot of questions about how Northwestern supports LGBTQIA plus identifying folks in terms, and we shared a little bit earlier in the chat, if anyone has missed it, resources available for students related to the LGBTQIA plus experience, but are there any specific resources for those who are not out, and or are students at Northwestern who perhaps are not identifying along that specific spectrum accepting of LGBTQI students? I can also touch upon this afterwards as a queer student at Northwestern, but I want to hear from you specifically.
Yeah, I would be honored to talk about this, and I'm going to tap Adam in a second because these are communities that we share in our care. So MSA, as I mentioned earlier, has the privilege of serving LGBTQIA plus students. And I want to be clear that for us, when we talk about A, that in some institutions, the A refers to ally, but for us, it's very much supporting our asexual community. So just to put that out there, that when we talk about the full spectrum, that we are very expansive in our understanding of gender and sexuality, and know that even the acronym itself doesn't capture all of our experiences, and there are still more letters to come, and that's the beauty of our community. And I say ours because this is my community too. I saw one of the questions coming in the chat that said, what if I didn't name on my application that I identify as queer? Well, to you, that student, whoever mentioned that, a lot of us don't even know that coming in, or we don't have the language once we even arrive, or maybe if we did, then that's amazing. But it's okay if you didn't name it at that point, or even if you don't name it during your 4 or 5 years as an undergraduate student, but just knowing that you have a community, that you have resources that you can be, that you have access to. So some of what we offer, we do a lot of helping students navigate the institution. So name change processes, access to bathrooms, quality healthcare, whether that's on campus or off campus, making sure that we don't just say that it's LGBTQ friendly, but we've done a lot of work to name what does LGBTQ affirming healthcare sound and look like, and how do we equip our students with the right skills, knowledge, and awareness to appropriately assess what kind of healthcare, not only that they need access to, but that they deserve. We also do a lot of training with our faculty. So what does it mean to use pronouns in the classroom? Or what does it mean to use examples that don't specify a man and a woman together, or even one person and one person? Because even thinking about our poly community, that relationships are expansive, relationships are ever evolving, you are ever evolving, and that's perfectly okay. We do a lot of work with our graduate students and our undergraduate students so that there's an opportunity for some mentorship and collaboration. So one that I would mention is we have an LGBTQ advisory board that allows our graduate students and our undergraduate students to come together. And really what we get to do is explore what's working at Northwestern and what's not. So for those of you who asked, is Northwestern an affirming place? Some aspects of it is, and I would say largely it is. And some are not, and we still have work to do. And so this advisory board allows us to get a pretty good pulse of what's it like inside the residence halls, or what is it like during your internship, or what is it like in XYZ student organization, or your interactions with faculty. And more importantly, beyond the pulse, how do we respond as a community to change that? The last thing that I'll mention, and then Adam, I'm going to pass it over to you to talk about how we support these communities. I'm also a part of a group that does training on campus. It's called the LGBTQ Ally Training. And it's a group of us, there's 12. We're strictly volunteers, but we make sure that we provide 4-hour trainings to our faculty and our staff to increase their awareness about supporting these communities. And the reason why many of us do this is exactly what I named at the beginning. I want to make sure, and many of our colleagues want to make sure, that the experiences that I had while I was in college, you do not have. And I'm really excited to say that we've had over 500 faculty and staff participate in this, and that's only over the last 2 years. So really excited to see the growth of these initiatives while still naming. We have a long way to go. I'm going to pass it to you, Adam.
Thank you. First, I'm so excited to hear about that training. Like, what a great number of people who are involved. That's just really, as you said, I wish that would have been my experience when I was in college. So that's really lovely. So one of the things that we offer at CAPS is actually this summer, I collaborated with Matt at MSA, and we offered kind of a group between CAPS and MSA, a support space for students who are LGBTQIA identified. Just when people had gone home for the shelter in place time, we wanted to be able to provide the support space for students in that community. And so that's one of the services that we provide. Also, we provide individual therapy, and I always like to say that we provide individual therapy for a range of issues. So people in the LGBTQIA community experience depression and anxiety like everyone else does as well. And so we see people for any sort of mental health issue that they're experiencing. We also see people if they're wanting a confidential space to talk about, to navigate coming out, or a confidential space to navigate family relationships. And so anywhere from more general mental health concerns to more specific issues related to identity or coming out or family relationships, we are happy to see you for any of those reasons. Another great thing about being in the Chicagoland area, and I know I keep talking about our referrals as well, but that's because I'm so proud of all the referrals and all of the therapists in the Chicagoland area. There are some incredible practices in the area. We have Center on Halsted, we have Howard Brown, we have LifeWorks. And so there's a number of practices that are specifically, their mission is to cater to people in the LGBTQIA community. And so there are so many places to go if you are wanting longer term treatment as well, that we're happy to connect you with, that we've had really positive experiences with. So we're happy to see you for a number of reasons and also connect you with other people who are confident in working with people in the community.
Awesome. I love all of that. I also truthfully did not know that there was an LGBTQ plus ally advisory board. That's awesome. I've also, even though I just graduated 2 years ago, I'm not sure when it came into fruition, but I'm glad it did. I did not know, at least in undergrad, that existed. So I'm glad that it's something that's taking place. And I agree with everything that Dav and Adam both share. And I know that my experience as a cisgender gay male is very different from like anyone else in the queer community, because there's intersectionality and there's an entire spectrum, as we discussed already. But I think that for me, I was really grateful for my fellow peers, at least, who generally were all not only tolerant of me being a gay identifying male on campus, but celebrating that and not just, ignoring that fact and being able to accept me and really empower me as a student that I was. So that's the only little tidbit I want to share before I blab on for too long. Mayra, I have a question for you, more so about the Compass mentorship program that you shared a little bit earlier. Can you talk about the specific programming events that take place, or how that sort of functions for first year students and our older, I guess, returning students is the word that I was looking for. Do you want to talk about that?
Of course, of course. And I'm actually going to start off by backtracking a little bit before I even get into Compass, because I realized that I shared in the language that I use, first generation, lower income, and or undocumented DACA. And that and or is very important because we are meeting with students one-on-one in SES. We are connecting students who come to SES with other partners, in large part because we don't see students as just one of those things or all three of those things. And as you were prompting Adam and Dav to talk about like what resources are available for our queer students. And so many, a big part of my job, a big part of SES's job is not only to know what those resources are, but to work intentionally and collaboratively with MSA, with CAPS, which segues, I think, well into the Compass Peer Mentor program, because you asked about what programming is happening. And so I'm going to put a bookmark in that question. I'm going to now backtrack and talk a little bit about just the history of Compass. And then we'll come full circle, I promise. So Compass is actually one of the first programs that came out of Student Enrichment Services. And so this is a program that is in its 6th year. I am currently working with the 6th cohort. And so Compass is a cohort-based, year-long peer mentorship program that is specifically for first year incoming, first generation lower income and or undocumented students. And they are connected for mentorship purposes with a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th year student who is also identifying as a first generation and or lower income student. And that is particularly special because we know that it is important to have the support and the guidance, not only of staff like Adam and Dav and myself, but also of your peers, right? Like there is a way that current students navigate the university that like, we're just not gonna get into those nooks and crannies of like the experience. And that's okay. That is totally fine. And that is where like we leverage the experience and the strengths and the gifts of our current students, our upper class students, to support these incoming students so that they can feel confident and encouraged and courageous in how they want to leave their mark at Northwestern. And so Compass is a program that's structured with one-on-one meetings. So it's a year-long program, like I mentioned, and mentors meet with their mentees bi-weekly every quarter. We also have weekly workshops that cover a myriad of different topics, but some off the top of my head that I know that like I would have never received as a first generation lower income student when I was in college and even in grad school are, how do you navigate financial aid? And like, what questions should you be asking? What is career development like? Like, how do you even consider like, I'm undecided, what does that even mean for like my career trajectory? Also like tips and like tricks around like, how do you finance an experience at Northwestern, right? Like, sure, you can be packaged and get financial aid in a very specific way, and that helps. And also, there are other things that come up. So how do you get access to those resources that help finance the experience at Northwestern? And they're getting all this information from either the mentors themselves building out curriculum in support of myself and my graduate assistant, Johnny, this year. And also the rest of the SES team, you know, is involved in like communicating these resources as well. And so those are weekly. And then we have currently bi-weekly weekend hangouts, right? So like, it can't be all about the resources. It can't be all about like getting you that information. We need to like also have space to just be, right? And so for Compass, those are the weekend hangouts. We're taking them virtual. They've been virtual since last year in the spring. And so we've done a myriad of different things from game nights, movie nights. We have our first one coming up actually this weekend. And so I'm looking forward to learning and hearing about how that all goes. So it's like the three basic pillars of Compass. And for me, like, I think Compass is such a special program for all the things that I just mentioned, but also because coming back to what I mentioned earlier around multiple identities, like first generation, lower income, undocumented DACA does not signify a specific race, a specific gender expression, a specific, none of those things. And what, and you know, common misconception, 100%, that, so I think it's important in building out workshops for Compass that we are considering how, for example, Dav named access to like health insurance and being conscious of like what that means around sexuality and gender expression and access to those resources. We need to be able in Compass to collaborate and also name those resources so that when we're talking about accessing health insurance, we're not just talking about it from a heteronormative space, we're talking about it from multiple perspectives as well. And so for me, like the programming for Compass is special, not just because it's made in part for and by students who identify as first generation lower income and or undocumented DACA, but also it's a collaboration across multiple offices, across multiple experiences so that we can really bring to this cohort of students each year something that's representative of what they need in their experience at Northwestern, which is different every single year. So that's a little bit about Compass.
Amazing. That was wonderful. And I learned a lot. Also, another program that I was not involved with as a first gen low income student at Northwestern, but happy it exists. And it really is, I think, as everyone shared here today, there's a lot of student-led services and a lot of student-led organizations and initiatives that are really brought upon due to student demand and really the hard work that our undergraduate students do in collaboration with our staff members. So I'm really grateful for this wonderful community that we're a part of. And I think, obviously, I only worked for one university being Northwestern. And I only went to school in one university, being Northwestern, that I was very privileged to attend. But I think that really does set our community apart and makes us so special. For any of our audience members thinking about Northwestern, I know that y'all are really smart and bright kids. You're looking at so many schools. And I know that, you're here and you're asking the right questions. I'm really grateful that everyone is present here today. So I encourage you to be attending these sessions and stay connected with us. But before we do go, I do want to ask, since we are wrapping up on time, each of our guests here today to just share some parting words. These students are mostly in their senior year, applying to different colleges and universities. Maybe some of them are still in the college process. Maybe some of them identify with many or one of these identities that we just shared today. Do you want to share some words with these students as they go about their days and lives? Deb, you're nodding, so I'm going to pick on you.
I'm happy to. I just didn't want to be a microphone hog, but I'm happy to. I already said it at the beginning, but we are so excited that you are even considering joining this community. All of us truly are a part of the work that we are because we want to serve students like you. So really excited. My one word of advice during this season, we'll call it, not even going to say challenging, but just a season. It's a different season for us, is look for ways that you can connect to the institutions that you're considering right now. So beyond sessions like this, connect with us on Instagram, connect with us on Facebook, see if there are opportunities where you can attend our virtual programs. Right now, you have a really unique opportunity where if you are considering a university or a college, that you might be able to have some early access to some of those experiences that you may not have had access to if we were in a different season. And certainly I mean that for the work that we do. That's not the same for my colleagues across the board. But right now, like tonight, we have a meditation service. You may want to join something like that. So please find us, MSA at NU, find us on Facebook, Multicultural Student Affairs at Northwestern. We're already excited to start connecting with you and hope that we get to connect with you even further.
That's awesome. And yeah, that's really awesome. I'm really glad that y'all have extended that invitation to our audience here today. And of course, for everyone viewing, we'll update our YouTube description with everyone's social media, everyone's websites, and some few resources connected back to our undergraduate admission office, as we do fortunately have students who with different identities and different groups and part of our own office who also, on top of those, employed and also a part of these communities within MSA, CAPS, and SCS can be more than happy to connect with you. Anything else y'all want to share? You don't have to, that is okay. Y'all shared some wonderful stuff already.
I think when you ask that, I'm thinking about a person in particular right now. I have a family friend who is going through the process of applying to colleges like Northwestern. And he has had ups and downs in the process of like, oh my God, am I like worth it? Like, should I even be applying to this? And like that, like, and that's like, I feel like that's a perfectly normal like experience on top of where the season that we're currently in, to use Deb's words. Like there's already like a lot that's compounding on one another. And so like, I think for me, what I'm thinking about and what I share with him in particular is like, you are worthy. I'm channeling AOC here in the documentary. Like you just gotta take up the space. And when you have that moment in your head where you're like, Northwestern, or like if it's not Northwestern, like it is a privilege to have students like you, like consider a place like us. And so take up that space, like don't let that personal statement get to you, like write your story, do your thing and celebrate this. And I think in particular for like, thinking about first generation students, lower income students, our undocumented DACA students, our students of color, our queer students, like there are just very different experiences happening right now for all those different populations. We are here, we are alive, and we are well. And I think that's worth celebrating. And so I hope that you find the time to celebrate. Yes, that is all.
There is very little I can add to anything that's been said. That was amazing. My reaction when I heard closing comments was just like, wow, this is a difficult time and everyone needs an extra dose of kindness. And so I ask you to allow yourself that extra dose of kindness right now. Think about what you would tell a good friend of yours if they were going through what you're going through, and try to send those words back to yourself. So just really try to be kind.
Love it. You could never be too kind is my thing. And I think also like I would encourage our students attending today and anyone who may come across this recording in the future that you should reach out to our office as well. Trust me, as a prospective student, even though that was my case 7 years ago now, to date myself a little bit, uh, something I wish I would have done more proactively was to reach out to staff at the respective universities I was looking at. Even admission staff, we're here to support you in the admission process. That's part of my favorite. That's one of my favorite parts of my job as well. And if there's any way that we can support you in the admission process, we're more than happy to provide that. And I'm speaking on behalf of the entire Office of Undergraduate Admission. But that's our time here today. Thank you so much to everyone who is attending and watching this and still with us. I hope that you enjoyed this experience. You can give us a like on this video if that is something that fancies you. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, especially follow everyone's office on social media as well. I'll update that description again. I hope you stay well, stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, do all those wonderful things, and go Cats. And stay tuned for more live from Northwestern episodes, everyone. Take care, y'all.